Hey guys, Janet here, aka Game Analysis, and today we were going to be talking Resident Evil 2. And for this video, I thought I'd bring on a guest. So joining me today is Radical Reggie, and he's going to be jumping into this conversation via Google Hangouts. So we're going to go ahead and cut to our discussion now. So first of all, Reggie, I want to say thanks for coming onto the channel to do this collab. It's really exciting. For those of you guys watching who aren't familiar with Radical Reggie somehow, but watch my content, YouTuber, part of the Metal Jesus Rocks crew. It's kind of how you started off on YouTube, and that grew into your own channel. Lots of awesome series on Reggie's channel, if you guys aren't familiar. Like, I love Breaking the Seal, personally. It's one of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah, it's like, because I just love physical media, and, I know so do you, so it's kind of just cool just to, watch you break the seal and talk about the game, and I really liked your... you have that series. I forgot when's the last time you did a post for it, but like the Interracial Gamer series, that one has some fun content. Like I really like it's all very different, but it's all also like just really honest takes. You do a lot of streaming too, and I've been following your content for a couple years, I think, but we didn't meet until
Well, back when it was like barren, pretty much.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I've been there for a while. I support you on Patreon too. There's some extra content there if you guys want to support Reggie on Patreon. I'll put the links in the description. And then we met at Mo GamesCon for the first time.
That's right.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add to like who you are and what you do?
I'm just a YouTuber. I like putting out content for you guys. I try to to do this YouTube thing as as a part-time thing. I try to like be ahead of the game, so I like try to have like 10 videos prepped and ready to go. And then I can like release them periodically and kind of like do other stuff without having to focus too hardcore on YouTube too much. But I'm a lighthearted gamer, old school gamer as I call myself now, and I'm definitely a Resident Evil 2 fan. So I'm actually really excited to talk about this with you today.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of talking before we started officially like recording the video, but I was really excited about doing this collab. Besides the fact that I like your content and I think you have like great things to say and can talk about games in a like an eloquent, interesting way. I'm also just like, okay, Reggie's been like Resident Evil from day one. Like you played the old school 2 like literally a week ago before the remake. So I'm like, okay, this will be interesting because you have like a storied history with it. And for me, like, for those of you guys who don't know, like my first Resident Evil game was Resident Evil 7, like literally 2 years ago. So I haven't played any other Resident Evil. I did play a little bit of like, or saw at least a little bit of, I think, the Resident Evil that was on the GameCube. I forgot which one that was.
Remake, first remake of the first Resident Evil. I think just Resident Evil. I think that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah, I wish I mean, it's like literally a few feet away, but I don't feel like kind of grabbing it. But we played, like my brother played that mainly, and I would watch him, but it was like too scary for me. I was like, I'm good. Like, but I have like vivid memories of like the dogs are like the classic Resident Evil thing to me. So playing 2 and seeing that come back, was interesting. But so what were your expectations going into Resident Evil 2 as like a longtime fan versus like me? I'm kind of like, I don't even know what the story is, and I kind of tried to avoid any of that information, even though it's like super old.
They weren't very high because me and my friend Bob had talked about this before. He's like, well, they're remaking Resident Evil 2. I mean, if they mess it up, we still got the original because the original was a masterpiece, so we weren't really too worried about it. But I think what really got me into it, one of my favorite enemies, the Tyrant, when they showed him in the game, and I pretty much found out he's going to be walking around in real time, I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want because it'll be more terrifying that way. I don't know if you know this, but there's a game called Hunting Ground. It was a survival horror game, and actually the people that are stalking you are actually actively walking around looking for you, and there's timed events when you meet them too. So it's kind of nice to see the Resident Evil engine do this with their games. Like have like everything they load the whole police station, and everybody's reacting to certain events in their own section. Like zombies are still roaming around, doing whatever they do, and that's just amazing. It's kind of like a sandbox way. Like if you play the old school Resident Evil, every time you open the door, it loaded. So it will kind of take you out of a dangerous environment. So that was your kind of a safe haven kind of. But this one, I mean, I opened up a door and zombie right there in your face, or Mr. X hiding behind the door, and bop you one. So it was pretty cool to see that in this one. What else I want to add to this? One more thing. I'll get into the zapping system in a second, but yeah, what do you want to say?
Yeah, for me it was weird because I went in with like no expectation, and like I tried to go in with knowing nothing, even though like the story is obviously like 2 decades old, so everyone already knows what happens, but
Wow.
I don't. So I'm like I don't want to know anything. Like I didn't know anything about the game, other than like very vague stuff like there's Claire and Leon. I knew about the liquors. I knew a couple things because since I write about games and I have to cover some like the live streams and stuff. Like I saw like a
Hmm.
little bit of William Birkin and stuff before I played it. But I tried to go in really fresh, so I didn't really have any expectation or knowledge going in. I just kind of was hoping that it'd be a fun experience, and I was really hoping that it would be somewhat accessible as someone that hasn't played a lot of the games because with seven, like I was lucky that I played with my friend Jess and we like passed the controller and we played the whole game together, and she's like longtime fan, so she's like, oh yeah, this is how this you got to pick that up because we're gonna need that in like 2 hours, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. But playing seven actually really helped me understand too, because as soon as I saw like all the weird stuff in the PlayStation, like the statues, I'm like, okay, I'm like that notebook from before, and I was kind of already in the mindset from having played seven. So the transition from seven to two was a lot smoother than I thought it would be.
What's cool about you starting with seven is that seven was pretty much like a soft reboot for
Mm-hmm.
the series. So that's definitely a good one to start at. Um, the series kind of like, even though a lot of people hate on Resident Evil 6, I love that game. I think it's amazing, but I guess it was too much for people, where it was
Mm-hmm.
too much action and less horror. So the soft reboot really helped the series. And thankfully, this one is really successful, as you're probably seeing. They're actually going to reboot the third game as well, which is actually an excellent game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just another experience of Resident Evil 2 that I wanted to tell you about. Back in the day when I first got it, it's probably the game that scared me the most, next to Silent Hill, because I had surround sound in my room at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So as I played it that first night, I was playing stuff. You could like hear everything. I'm talking about like stuff behind. It was like crazy. Like it was creeping me out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a thing called the B scenario, which is
Mm-hmm.
like what ours is called second run in a new game. Basically, you meet the tyrant in that one, and basically what he does is he stalks you in the game. And there was one moment where you're lighting these faucets in the conference room.
Mm-hmm.
You probably seen the conference room where, I don't know if you beat the B scenario, but
Yeah, I
the
did.
conference. Okay, you saw that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, I was in there. You have to light these faucets to get this gear for the clock tower, and as soon as you light the faucets, he just comes crashing through the wall. And to hear that kind of sound effect, like then it's like I almost dropped the controller. It was pretty terrifying. I had to pause the game for a second, take a couple deep breath, and then I got my composure back. So ran and got the gear. I think I ran out of the room and said, "Man, I can't. I'm glad we're away from him." And next thing you know, he burst through another wall to block you off out of the same room to
Mm-hmm.
get you. And I was almost ready to give up then, because I was like, I don't have no ammo, barely any ammo. I was terrified. So that's why I always tell people, your first experience with a game is going to be the one you remember the most.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I don't know if you heard me talk about Resident Evil 7, how a lot of DLC was like, a lot of content was cut to make DLC for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like a lot of that should have been in the game because it's part of your first experience.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of tell when developers cut stuff out of the game and then try to make it DLC instead of like starting fresh with DLC. So that's how I kind of felt about seven. But sorry, I was going on. I'm trailing off here,
No,
but
for sure.
um, going back to Resident Evil 2 though, the new one, I'm very happy that it's come out, because it's just, I think that a lot of ideas that they wanted to use for the original Resident Evil
Mm-hmm.
were actually implemented in this one. With the whole new Resident Evil engine, with everybody walking around doing their own thing, like stuff actively going on in PlayStation, even though you're not in that room,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty amazing. And I'm very happy with the product. As much as I want to say that I wasn't really pumped for it, I think I am. I think that's just the old man in me now. Like, I've been disappointed with a lot of games, so it's hard. You have to really pick and choose what you really want to spend your time on. And with Capcom's track record of certain games, I was kind of let down in a
Mm-hmm.
way. Um, not not anything with, a couple Resident Evil games, but nothing too crazy. But sorry, you can go ahead. I'm going to talk forever here.
No, you're good. I mean, that's what we're here for. So yeah, I mean, I was pretty pleasantly surprised with the game. I guess I kind of went in, even though I had like no expectations. I'm always a little bit annoyed when there's remakes and remasters, because even though they're good and like sometimes those games are so old that it is hard to like I'm not gonna enjoy Resident Evil 2 the way I would have in 1998 because I was also 4 in 1998, so I definitely wouldn't have enjoyed it that much. But like when I know, right? But I mean, you're not gonna like if I played Resident Evil 2 last year, like the original, like I'm just not gonna enjoy it the same way because it's a different era. Those controls don't translate. And as much
Exactly.
as like, yeah, I think so many old school fans are like, no, what are you talking about? Like it's great. And it is a classic, but like you just can't feel that for it anymore because like you can still appreciate, maybe what it did or whatever, but it's so like, especially at the time, like those graphics were a lot more, up to speed in 1998, but now it's like, I mean, I'm not going to have the same feelings about it. Like you just can't really replicate that. So, it's cool that remasters and remakes kind of let, modern gamers experience older games, but at the same time, I'm just like, I don't know, man. It's the same thing. And then I was kind of also annoyed with like Capcom's presentation of they're like, oh, this isn't a remaster. It's like a new game built on a old framework. I'm like, this is a remaster. Like, a remake. So
Yeah, the civil. I don't know why they're trying to deviate from that. It's the
exactly.
remake.
So I was kind of just like, I'm like, I almost, I dislike them so much that I should almost stop probably buying remakes and remasters, but I just can't help it. And I'm just part of the problem. It's okay. But yeah, I was really surprised with how much I liked the game, especially, and this kind of sort of jumping ahead in terms of the order of the game. But second run really surprised me. Like I know when you and I were talking over Twitter, and you're like, "Nah," I was like, I was not gonna do second run because for me, like once the credits roll, I'm good. I'm out. I finished. Like we're done. But you're like, "Nah, you gotta do second run. Like you want to see those other endings." And I was like, you know what? I'll do it because we were doing this video, and I'm like, well, I want more to say about the game, so I'll play it. And I
So
loved it.
you loved it. Well,
Yeah.
tell me this: who did you play with first?
I played with Claire first, and then I played with Leon.
Okay, so yeah, definitely. I'm glad you played. Well, I like Leon's better just for certain reasons. That there's a certain more activity that happens in his game on certain points.
I
And you,
agree. Like the companion character.
I guess I could say tyrant pretty much.
Yeah.
But Claire had some really cool scenes, and I'm really like thinking about the whole Sherry scenario
Mm-hmm.
and Chief Irons. I thought they really did him well in this game. I was so happy how they did him. He's like for me, he's one of those villains you like, even though he's hella crazy. And I like him because he just seemed like from the original Resident Evil 2 game, he was okay. He's sick in both games,
Mm-hmm.
but in the original one, he was so like cold-hearted and crazy that he was like actually trying to hunt his own police officers down that were trying to escape the police station and killing them.
Oh wow.
So pretty crazy in that one. This one, he wants to get the whatever for that whatever reason. Are we okay with spoilers here, or are we trying to hold back from them?
I think we can do some light ones, and I'll just put in the description like what kind of allude to what's given away. Just a little
Okay,
bit.
I'll kind of chill, but I just thought his whole demeanor in this one was kind of like made me laugh sometimes. Like here's a light. I would say maybe it's a light one. It's a conversation he has with Claire on the phone that you see in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
When Claire tries to get like snappy with him, that's where he's looking at her and he hangs up the phone. He keeps staring at her on the screen. That cracked me up. Like it was so funny. I mean, like he's trying to like show he had power and he hangs up the phone. And I thought I wish there was more of him in it. I actually think with the new DLC coming out, that's coming out in about a week or so,
Yeah.
that they'll focus more on them. So I'm actually pretty excited for that. What else I want to say? My first playthrough of the game didn't go so well.
Oh yeah, you said you missed a lot of stuff, right?
Well, I was sitting. My friend Marcus was here, and I usually sit on my couch and play the game and just relax. And I was playing it live, and I was sitting in a whole different area, and I couldn't really see stuff. And then when you're playing something live, you feel like you have to entertain the audience. You feel rushed. And I was like, man, why did I do this? I agreed to this, but I did, and I missed a lot of stuff. And I was like, oh my god! So I started over, and everything fell through. Like it was. I mean, like came through. I was really happy with it. But yeah, my first playthrough of the game really sucked. I was wow, not a good experience. But I'm glad I went through it again. So also I want to show you. This is how much of a Resident Evil 2 fan I am. I have the GameCube version here, which is considered to be the best version of the best console versions of Resident Evil 2. And then of course here's craziness. The Resident Evil 2 for Game Boy Advance.
Oh wow, that's a deep cut.
Well, yeah, it's a tech demo, so it doesn't last that long. It's just showing the game,
Okay.
the Game Boy, and the Dreamcast version. Which the only reason I got this because when you play on a Dreamcast, it's kind of cool to see in your controller your health, like it'll show up what your condition is.
Oh yeah, that's it. And you played on PS4 for this one, right? Of course.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that the DualShock. I'm working on an article right now about that, like how it lights up. That was super helpful. Like I loved using the PS4 for Resident Evil 2. I think is the best system to play it on because like there's so much that happens with like the controller audio. Like when you turn like the key and you hear it in the controller. Like I love that. It was so cool.
Very cool stuff like that. And phone calls, I think, like, do you get
Yeah,
phone
yeah,
calls? I
yeah.
can't
Well,
remember.
in the hunk mode at least, like I think you get one tape recording or two tape recordings, like on like a audio tape, and then also you get the
Mhm.
VHSs, you know. But like in the game, you'll hear it; it'll play back on the phone. So like when Fourth Survivor starts, and you have that call to like the other like officers, it's like through the DualShock, which is like super cool.
Oh, speaking of honk, so here's the thing. So I played Resident Evil 2
Hmm.
like multiple times back when I was in high school, and I didn't know there was a Fourth Survivor mode.
Hmm.
You know, I was like, I came across it by accident. And I was like, Fourth Survivor, what is this? So I got pumped up, and I couldn't believe they added a fourth scenario to the game that was really cool. Now the honk mode in the original game for me, it was difficult. I mean, it's
Hmm.
they give you a certain, you can't pick up any items. You have a certain amount of items, and you have to try to get to the end of the police station. Like you have to get to the heliport to get away, and it is brutal because if you played with tank controls before,
Hmm.
the movement is so awkward, and
Yeah.
like they would be in certain rooms with zombies right near you, and you can't turn around and shoot them in time. They're biting on you. It was insane. I played a little bit of this honk mode for the new Resident Evil, for Survivor, I
Right.
mean, and it's actually really fun. I just didn't play through it all the way because I just didn't feel like going through all that headache. So I
Yeah.
just
I
watched the
didn't
game.
finish it either. Like it's too much. It was. I was like, I gotta go. But yeah, I
Yeah.
was. It's funny that I liked Fourth Survivor so much, and I was like, once again, like this game just kind of kept pulling me in, and it was partially because that we're doing this video, but also I liked it a lot.
Hmm.
Like I finished second run, and I had been spending days and days trying to like beat all the stuff. I'm like, okay, now I'm done. I'm gonna return it. I got it at Red Box. I'm gonna return it to the Red Box, and I was like, well, let's just open Fourth Survivor. You know, I'll play until I die because um, I decided to play my first like the first run I played on. I think they call it assisted mode. It's like the easy mode of the game. Basically, there's auto
Oh,
aim, and you get like it regenerates your health for people that don't know.
so
Like when you're
one more thing before you go on. So when you play demo, does it automatically aim for certain parts of the zombie for you?
You know what? I guess I didn't test it super intensely. I think it kind of locks on to the
Okay.
zombie, but like for me, I always, even when I don't use aim assist, I try to usually go for headshots, or like if I'm low on bullets, maybe I'll do like a knee thing. Um, so it'll basically aim there, but like you kind of have to move it. Like you know, there's later on in the game there are like once again light spoilers if you don't know the game. Like there's the zombie. Yeah, it's like 'cause some people it's like spoilers for a game that came out like 2 decades ago. But you know the plant zombies where they have those little like kind of pieces that you want to if you shoot all of them they're like dead pretty much
Oh yeah.
for sure, or you can burn them, right? But like so for that like you kind of have to aim it a little bit, but it'll like lock on. It'll kind of do like the end aim for you. But
Right.
it's way easier than like having to aim yourself. So I had that on there, and then what the other thing it does is if you're in the red for health, after a while it will bring you back to caution. So like it's like not really hard to die. Like no offense if people are dying in assistant mode, but it's pretty. For me, I didn't have a hard time not dying with that
It
on.
regenerates for that.
And I was gonna play second run standard mode because I'm like I kind of played it on assisted because I'm like I just need to beat the game kind of as fast as possible, and I didn't want to like be frustrated like partway through the game. Though you can change it down to assisted anytime, but then you can't change it back up. Anyway, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna do second run on standard mode. Like I already did this, I'm good. But second run, I found a lot like combat harder than first run because the tyrant is kind of already like present pretty much immediately. So I was like, okay, I'm good. I got this and that. So when I got to Fourth Survivor, I'm like, I'm gonna suck because there's no assistant mode. You just gotta go. But I
You
actually
gotta
did
go.
decent. I did decent. I only did it once until I died, and I got to the um the garage, the parking garage, like, and then
Oh,
I got like a little
well,
bit farther than that, and then I think the dogs got me at some point. Like I got like a little bit farther, but
yeah, I
um,
got around that too before I died as well.
mhm.
But that's really good then.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was surprised by myself because I'm like, oh, I thought like I was definitely gonna be dead because haven't been playing on standard mode, but it wasn't too bad. And I loved it, which was weird because like everyone always talks about with Resident Evil, it's all about like survival horror, inventory management, and I'm like I felt kind of basic, loving the like run and gun like crazy stuff, but the music was actually really good in Fourth Survivor. It was like super dramatic, and I loved like what a badass that character is because he's kind of like his approach is sort of he's just there, and everyone else kind of has
Yeah,
everyone else kind of cares about someone or has other motivations, right? Leon and Claire hope each other makes it out. They have like a partner that they're kind of with for part of the game. He's just like, fuck it, and he's like snapping people's necks and stuff. It's super cool, and I was really into how it was just like, beeline, no puzzles, like we're just going, and it was very exciting to me.
It's exciting because you're trying to escape, like they're letting you got to get out of here, and then you get a sense of urgency when you see how many zombies are coming at you, like at certain angles. So it's like, whoa, like next room, dogs are in here or whatever. It's like, geez, they're throwing everything at you, kitchen sink. But luckily, by the time you unlock that mode, you played the game and you know how everything is.
Yeah, and where everything is, and
right. So. You kind of motivated me. Maybe I'll try it out tonight. Maybe I'll try to beat it. I don't know.
It's not too long either. I mean, most people can. It's like 10 minutes, so.
It's hard minutes.
It is hard minutes, yeah. It's funny because before I knew anything about it, because I didn't know anything about it, like I was like, how long is this? I'm like, I knew it wasn't as long as the whole game. I'm like, is it like an hour? And when I was playing it, I'm like, when does this end? Like, is this really like it's only like a 10, 15-minute experience. But I was out here thinking like they're going to have you go for like a 2-hour trek across the whole thing. But
yeah, that would have been crazy.
But yeah, like it's really fun. It's the thing I like about the different modes too is like you experience the same environment in like very different contexts, so it's like fresh each time that you go through it.
Right. I wanted to ask you this. So how are you feeling about the new DLC? Because I didn't even know it was coming out as soon as as it is. Until you told me. It's free DLC too, right?
Yeah, it's free DLC. Yeah.
And it's story mode. It's called Ghost Survivors or something like that.
Yeah, and like I don't think they've released too much information about it, but like what their tweet had said was explore what if stories of 3 unfortunate souls who never made it out of Raccoon City: the gun shop owner, the mayor's daughter, the soldier, and they each have their own names. So I'm thinking they're going to be 3 separate like storylines because they each have their own names. So I'm guessing it's not just one bundle. I think it's like you select one, select another.
So here's the thing from the old school Resident Evil. Now this is not a spoiler because it's 20 years old, but Chief Irons, like remember how I was telling you how he would hunt people down and kill them because he wanted to escape? Well, he hunted down the mayor's daughter and killed her.
Yeah, and she was the one that you see on the table, right? Like when you're okay. I figured that's who she was, but I didn't know who this woman was. They never told you in the game either. They're just like, I don't know.
It's creepy because he's a taxidermist, but he doesn't mind doing taxidermy on human beings. So that's kind of where that's where his really sick twisted side comes in. Like he's like really crazy. So in the original game, like you actually hear her scream, but you can't get to the room in time. And by the time Claire gets in there, you see her body on the table, and all of a sudden Chief Irons turns around with a gun pointing at you and says, "Oh, I thought you were a zombie." So it's a really trippy scene. If you ever see it, you should probably look it up on YouTube. But I'm really happy that they're kind of going to those what if scenarios because, I mean, she's a part of Raccoon City history. So especially Robert Kendo too, because I don't know if you noticed, Resident Evil 1.5 was the original Resident Evil 2 that was supposed to come out years ago, and it was around 70-80% complete, but they decided to scrap it because pretty much it was going to end the series because they were going to do the close it, stop Umbrella and all that stuff in it. And Chief Irons was actually a good guy in that version. So
weird.
And people like Marvin and Ada played larger. No, Marvin and the police officer and Robert Kendo played larger roles in the game. Like they were actually helping you out in the game. So in Resident Evil 2, it's kind of weird that they kind of like made them. They didn't give them large roles really in the original.
Right.
So, yeah. So sorry, I was trailing off again. I was just thinking deep about it.
No, but I think I think to answer your question, which was like, what do I think about the DLC? I think it's interesting. I guess I would be, if I get the game again, like either rent it again or buy it like full price. I'd be interested in playing it because I do like, I like the content, and something I didn't like about the way Resident Evil 7's DLC rolled out. It was a pretty big gap between when it first came out to when like more DLC came out. But here it's so immediate that I'm like, well, I mean, sure, boot it up again. But I think it's interesting that like the way they're kind of trying to make it more modern with the DLC, and then they also, I don't know if you know this, but they have weekly challenges in the game. Like,
oh, did it?
Yeah, it's weird though because, and I don't know if they're gonna like try to revamp it in a better way because I wrote like a news story covering it, and I found it so weird they had weekly challenges because it's stuff like maybe like beat the game without getting damage or something like that, like stuff like that. And when the game first came out, people had done some of that stuff because they had played it. But I'm thinking, okay, what about in 2-3 months if people like you and me already beat it, already played it, are we really going to go back, play the whole game just to do this challenge, So it's interesting because I'm like, I don't see that really working for them, but the DLC probably will. So it's weird how, like, it's like the idea of trying to make a single player game, like extend the life of a single player game, because like once it's done, it's kind of done. And I get why they want to do that marketing wise, but I think sometimes it doesn't always translate that well for like the players. Like, I'm like, I'm not gonna do this weekly challenge because it's like an 8-hour, 9-hour game. Like every week I'm gonna play Resident Evil 2. Like that's too much.
Yeah, definitely not. I'm not playing for anything like that. I'm just playing for like my own satisfaction with story mode and entertainment. It was nice to go back into Raccoon City again and see how everything looks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I am such a big Resident Evil fan. Anything that has to deal with Raccoon City, I pretty much get into. Like, there's a game called Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City.
Uh-huh.
As kind of play, it's like a SOCOM type game. A lot of people hate on it, but the game is actually pretty cool when you want to look at more of Raccoon City and how it looks. So it's actually a really, despite being like, being torn apart, it's a good looking city. So
for sure. What's something from the original Resident Evil 2 that this game didn't kind of include that you're like, oh, it would have been nice if they kept this aspect of the original game?
The zapping system would have been definitely cool.
Yeah, can you talk about what that is? Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, the zapping system is pretty much if you play, like, say you played with Claire for the first time,
mm-hmm.
you beat it, and then anything you did in that game, like picked up certain items or certain weapons or pouches, or did certain things or killed certain bosses, it would affect when you play the second playthrough as Leon. Okay. So they didn't really do that in this game. So here's an example. I first beat Resident Evil 2 back in the day, and I went through the game and I killed the alligator. Mm-hmm. There's two ways to fight the alligator. You can either kill it or make it run away from you. I actually killed it the first time. Mm-hmm. Now, when I played Claire's game, when it came to the part where you fight the alligator, it wasn't there. So she didn't have to deal with it. So mm-hmm. that's the kind of stuff that's kind of like what the zapping system is.
Okay.
Picking up certain items or doing certain things would affect another character's playthrough. I mean, when you play as that character. Mm-hmm. They didn't really do it in this one, and they probably didn't do it because time restraints, like they had to get the game out by a certain mm-hmm. time. But I would love to see that maybe. Well, I don't know how they would do a Resident Evil 3, but yeah, that's what I was disappointed with in this one. And that's not a big gripe though.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. I mean, what they put together was great. I mean, the Resident Evil engine, they could really do a lot of good things with this engine. Is there anything else I want to? I'm trying to think of something else that I was upset they didn't put into this one. I think they did a really good job. I liked that they didn't bring back the old voice actors. Mm-hmm. There's that lady who's been doing Claire Redfield's voice for like ever since the original Resident Evil mm-hmm. 2. And she was like, and people were trying to say, get her back. I was like, gosh, it's been 20 years later. Get some fresh talent in there. Like the voice,
Yeah, for sure.
I was happy about that, definitely. But I would just say another one thing I'm just pointed in both Resident Evil 2 games. A lot of people may not agree with me. The ending just really bugs me. The ending, just after what they went through and the ending that you see, mm-hmm. like how it's like, what the heck, like. And I'll just say, like, what I'll say is, without spoiling, is that the characters, like their attitude, like they seem real happy from what they went through. You know what I mean? Kind of like.
Yeah, like it's a little bit too much of a happy ending.
Yeah. Speaking of what happens later in the game or whatever, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's like. Heck, like how could you guys use whatever?
Or there's a couple moments of like, once again, this would be, I think, too much of a spoiler, but like there's a few things that obviously it's a video game, so like none of this stuff is gonna be realistic, right? Claire probably can't like, lift a whole bookshelf, like like stuff like that, right? Like that's probably not. Like, can Leon really like break through walls the way like can lift? That probably not. So I understand that stuff because people always like whenever I mention that they're like, it's just a game, it's not gonna be realistic. But there's a couple things like. In maybe just Leon's second run or maybe just Leon's story in general, it's hard for me to tell because I didn't play like it 4 times. I only played it 2. But like there's a character, like one of the companion characters, right, where you're kind of playing as like a secondary character in the game, where it looks like they kind of make another appearance, and I'm like, weren't you like already? Didn't you kind of fall from like a really
yeah.
Would you? How okay, where I was like, that's I don't know if you're back yet, so stuff like that. And then oddly enough, I actually really agree with your thing about what's the system you said it was called? The what system?
For the zapping
The
system for the
zapping
original
system.
game.
I didn't even know about that, but that actually is one of my big criticisms of the game as well. Even though I didn't like know the term for that or that it was a
Right.
thing in the original, because I really loved and was surprised because there was a lot of conversation happening around like what Resident Evil 2 is like, the remake. But there was also a lot of misinformation going around, so people were like, "Oh, second run, it's like the same thing." Like, and it is technically because like you're still solving the same puzzle, but like the answers to the puzzle are different, and the items are different, and the weapons are different, and the way the enemies interact with you are different. Like, in second
Hmm.
run, like lickers are there immediately. Like you're not like they're just hanging out in the hallway already. That kind of stuff. Other things too did kind of follow the story where like if you did first run, you like meet one character who like eventually gets infected, and then when you do second run, they're already infected. Like they had stuff like that was cool, but then
Hmm.
it was weird that it's like, oh, blow up this cage and then blow it up again somehow. Like the cage just went back. It's like, yeah, stuff like that. I wish they had
Here's
changed.
a funny thing. So with the zapping system, you always fight different bosses depending on what zapping system you
Mm-hmm.
use, and the story would be different. Like I know what scene you were talking about towards the end of the game when it comes to a fall. Well, in the zapping system and the other one, if you play the other scenario, a whole other different event happens
Right.
than that. So it's like, whoa, dude, this is what happens. So it kind of gives people nothing really canon, so they can always think of like, oh, I think this is what happened, really
Mm-hmm.
happened. Like it gives you that choice of not being, I don't know, not always canon. You can always like just have a choice or whatever. They like to leave it loosely open, pretty much is
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say. Um, but the zapping system was originally supposed to be in the first Resident Evil game, but they ran out of time for that one. Did you know the first Resident Evil game was supposed to be 2 players? Could you imagine
No,
the tank of people? That's wow.
it's
I
just be
guess
on
yeah, I
one
can't.
controller. Like,
I guess I can because I played Resident Evil Outbreak, so that was
yeah,
fun playing that online.
multiplayer Resident Evil 1 on Nintendo Switch. You take the Joy-Con, you just turn it sideways. Um,
I mean,
that would be good.
that'd
I'd
be pretty
play
cool. Yeah, definitely. I hope Resident Evil, some kind of Resident Evil, comes out for the Switch. I mean, something that kind of utilize the hardware, something its own game, maybe something unique. Because I don't think it can handle Resident Evil 2,
Nah.
but maybe they could do something else with it. But gosh, I keep thinking about this DLC coming out now. It's it coming out within a week now. I'm really
Yeah,
excited.
next February 15th. I think that's Friday. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hopefully it has some
Hopefully, it's not
interesting
delayed.
layers. Yeah, I don't think it will be. I think they probably have known about it for a while, but not in a janky way. It's kind of weird because like I'm not a developer and I don't know development as much, so it's hard to tell like how much is that conspiracy theory true, right? Are they making stuff and then like holding it, or like how does it work? And then also like because some developers have the approach of like they'll wait to hear what the fans want and then they'll make it, but like I think that can get crazy too because then you're trying to like make stuff like within a couple like weeks, and that just seems like that's probably not gonna be one that might not be quality, and two that might not be healthy for the people making the game. So but I think this is a cool approach because they're like it's kind of like now it really is extra content that it wasn't in the original game. Like it's kind of stretching not beyond a remake because it's still a remake, but it's like what can we do more with this that we did that goes beyond what the base game is. So I think that could be pretty cool to have in
I
there.
also want to say this, like how we were talking about how like with DLC, like they might cut out the game or make fresh. The reason why it's important to have as much, I mean, when you have DLC or something what you would call DLC, as close to the game as possible instead of like a year later, because people are always doing different things. They're
Mm-hmm.
playing different games. Sometimes it's hard to go back. They're playing
Yeah.
a certain game for a while, getting into it, and they need that DLC around that time where they're still actively playing it. You know what I mean? That's why I don't feel like you shouldn't really release DLC like a year later. I mean, that's insane because you might not be as interested. Like I beat Resident Evil 7,
Mm-hmm.
and I brought my buddies, and I said, "Get back to say I'm good." And then when it came time for the DLC to come out, and I went back and played, I was like, I don't feel like playing this again. I was more pumped for it back then. I would have played it
Right.
again. And now a year later, it's like, ugh. But not saying it's bad or nothing, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty games. You have a different vibe going on with the games you're playing at that time. So hopefully
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, yeah, for sure. I guess kind of starting to close out. Things I really liked about the game, like I said, the sound design, specifically if you play with the PS4 and the DualShock controller, was really cool. Like I just love like putting that key in and like doing the portable safe and all that. I thought that was really fun. I really love the puzzles in this game. I think also honestly, so I didn't actually find the game to be that scary, and I'm scared of everything. Like I'm actually a very like terrified person. I don't watch horror movies. I don't really play horror games. But having played 7, which was especially first person perspective, really, and they had a couple of jump scares in 7, which, some people might think is like cheap or something, but I thought they were pretty well done, to be honest. Because some people like don't really like jump scares, but I thought it was really well integrated with the story in 7. And I found it like like Resident Evil 7, I was very invested in the enemies here in a way that I didn't really feel in Resident Evil 2 Remake, but I liked the puzzles and stuff more because I think the puzzles are my favorite part of Resident Evil. Like, that's why in 7, like, Lucas's storyline was one of my favorites because he had that twisted puzzle with, like, the birthday cake and everything. Yeah, I loved it. I was a big...
Okay, yeah, Lucas.
Oh, I love Lucas. Lucas is great. Oh, my God. But speaking of, I guess, like, our big differences, I was not actually a big fan of Mr. X, which I know is terrible to say, but, like...
I don't know.
I didn't find him that scary for 1, and then 2, I just found it annoying because I got lost in that. I got lost in that police station a lot. So sometimes, I'm almost doing something, I gotta loop all the way around. Like it sometimes became a little bit of a chore. But in people's defense, like my brother was watching me play it, and it was during my second run, and I was playing as, like, once again, Light Spoils, I was playing as Ada Wong, and she encounters Mr. X2, and that's a bit more intense because she doesn't really have the same amount of ammunition on her.
Yeah.
And you have to, there's, like, one part where you're stuck in a room with him trying to kind of, like, activate this terminal. Yeah, you're kind of just looping around. And I was, like, doing that, and there's those big footsteps, and my brother's like, oh my God, this is so scary. I'm like, I don't find it scary. And he's like, that's because you're sick. So maybe I'm just sick, but I didn't find it too
It's kind of I think the Tyrant, Mr. X, is pretty much a novelty to the people who played the original one because, I mean, he was the most terrifying enemy in that game. Now, here's the thing everybody knows is the Tyrant is the final boss in the first Resident Evil game. So that one, the one in the first one was pretty wild, like not really that intelligent, I don't think. This one has some intelligence where he knows how to follow his orders and track you down. So it's stuff with the first one. I'm trying to close. We're closing out. I'm just trying to say this real fast.
No, man, go ahead.
How this one has the footsteps that creep you out and make you think about where you need to go. That didn't really happen in the first game because after you got out of a room, that was it. Like you escaped them. But they tried to utilize his footsteps, the creepy footsteps in the first game, and you can hear them, and it's pretty creepy. But they couldn't really do much with it because of the hardware limitations. Right. So I think for me, he's the best thing about this one as someone who's played the original. Now, if I just played this one first, it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal to me. I mean, we've seen some crazy games over the years, so I mean, it's just more of a throwback for me. Like some people who played the original with the Tyrant, Mr. X. So.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on, your history with it.
Did you get by his footsteps at least?
By the footsteps, you said?
Yeah.
Not really. I had a hard time. I don't know why. I think it's because, and then when I played on standard, and that's why I put it down to assisted too, because standard mode, I would just, pretty much if he hit me, it's like almost instant death. And I'm like, I just am not good enough to do like what I need to get done. So that's why I dropped down to assisted. But like, but in either one, it was like, I don't know, there's a good chance I'm going to get hit, but then either you die or you don't die. And I just didn't care. I don't know. I guess I'm just,
like that. Hey,
I'm just cold-blooded like that.
Somebody ran into a glitch playing Resident Evil 2, and there was 2 tyrants.
Oh,
did you see that video?
No, I didn't. That's crazy.
Yeah, he fought one tyrant upstairs. I mean, down in the yard, I think. And then he went upstairs. He said, "Man, I'm still hearing the footsteps. What's going on?" And then he walked into the tyrant was right there. And then he walked in the back in the hallway, and he kept looking both ways. There was a tyrant coming in one angle. There's a tyrant opening the door. It was so creepy. I thought that was like probably a cool mode that they could add into the game. Probably they might make a DLC. Maybe they could make it. I mean, not DLC, but like an update or something like that. But funny that he ran into a glitch that did that because it shows the game can have 2 tyrants stalking you. And that would be really creepy. But yeah.
But it was. Yeah, I mean, Tyrant was solid sometimes. I had one good moment where it's kind of hard to tell where he is even with the footsteps. And I'll be like looking, like just standing there trying to figure it out. And one time I was in one room and I'm like, I thought he was going to come through one door and I'm just going to wait. And then if he shows up, I'm just going to go through the door behind me. But he came in the door that I was like standing in front of. So I was like, damn. But yeah, I like that. I like that they also carried over from 7. The, enemies can go through the doors because that definitely added something because you weren't just automatically safe, when you went into one thing. It can create some like tight situations if you're not like looking at the map in time. And, but yeah, I really like the puzzles. And I think anyone, one big thing I want to say about it is anyone that doesn't do survivor horror, but maybe if you at least like puzzles, like I don't find it that scary because it's third person too. It's like okay, it's not too bad. And I think it's worth playing because like the puzzles are just so good and the story's pretty fun. And I loved reading all the little things on the pieces of paper and all that. Like I enjoyed the world they created. So I think kind of everyone should check this out, even if it doesn't seem like it's your thing, because I think it has a pretty big mass appeal for what it is.
Definitely, I totally agree with you. So yeah,
All right.
I think. Oh, was
No, go ahead.
you
No, go
were,
ahead.
um, this one has sold 3 million copies, or they've sold 3 million copies. I mean, this is already way past the first. I mean, Resident Evil 7.
hmm
Resident Evil 7 didn't sell as well as they wanted to at first. So this shows that hopefully Capcom, they're taking note of this. When they listen to the fans, they get good results with their games. But people have been asking for a Resident Evil remake ever since the first Resident Evil got remade. So now they finally listened and look at. I'm happy that these results are in. So Resident Evil 3 remake is already on the books. So I
Yeah.
can't wait for that to come out. We'll
Awesome.
probably do another one when
Yeah,
that
I'll
comes
see you
out.
for Resident Evil 3. I guess very last thing before we end, and then also plug anything you want to plug if you want to, talk about series you do or your Patreon or anything like that. But what do you want to see in Resident Evil 8? I don't have an answer to this because I just started the franchise. I don't know what I want out of it. But what would you want RE8 to look like?
I don't want it to be first person.
Okay.
That's I mean, if they have to make it first person. Give it let people choose third person view. I mean, I think
Okay.
they're gonna, what I mean, like
hmm
both ways. So I don't want first person. That's just annoying. Unless it's gonna be VR, then I understand.
hmm
Um, I would just like to see more development with the character story. I mean, hopefully it's not some of the older characters that you've seen in Resident Evil games. Because if you play as an old school character, you won't really feel scared because they've been in that situation before. So new characters, new environment. And new bosses and all that good stuff. All the stuff that made this game great, do it in this one, the part 8. So
All right. We'll
I'm
see.
pretty sure we got a while for 8, but it'll be
Yeah,
next
I think it's
generation.
going to be a while. Well, we'll see what they end up doing with it, or if they kind of just like keep going back into the archives and making stuff. So before we close out, is there anything we want to promote or mention?
Shoot. I can't think of anything right now. Just hey, here's a shout out to my buddy Marcus, Retro Game Players. Go check him out, guys. He has good content. So definitely Retro Game Players, Gundam Rust Gaming, Sarah Morrow. Gosh, now I'm getting pumped up. I'm thinking of all my friends that you guys could go check out. But yeah, guys, Gundam Rust Gaming. I think I said Gundam Rust already, and that's all I can think of right now. Brain freeze. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
no, totally cool. All right, so thanks for joining me again on this video, Reggie, Radical Reggie to be specific, and all you guys watching, thanks for checking this out, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.
yeah.